morning, and you know, my dad would be reading the paper. It was just a natural thing to see. I don't think there's, I think it's quite a natural thing, and it's an innocent thing.
So I decided to do page 3, and I found that I had more power because I was already respected in the modelling. So I never really had any bad experiences. All were good. I had the best time of my life.
But for many women and for many years, it has been one of the most potent symbols of sexism in British society. The latest campaign, launched 2 years ago, became increasingly vocal, tapping into what many people regard as something of a feminist renaissance. But some feel it conflicts with the very notion of what feminism is supposed to be about.
I think if anyone's a feminist, it's a page 3 girl, isn't it? Because she's saying, I'm doing my thing, this is my choice, I choose to do this, and I'm making a decision, and I'm making my own money, and I'm independent, and look at me, I'm successful.
You know, I'm from a working class background, and for me, I just thought, oh, I want to be a page 3 girl. And they annoy me a little bit, because I think, it's not like we go around saying you can't be a feminist. Well, that's your choice. And I perfectly understand why you're feeling that, but I don't see why you have to bang on about it and then stop other people doing what they want to do, because they kind of probably squashed a lot of girls' dreams.
Campaign founder Lucy Holmes insists it's not about curbing individual women's freedoms. She understands how some might feel empowered by doing page 3, but the impact on women as a whole must take priority.
Children look at the newspaper and they see page after page of pictures of men in clothes doing stuff, running the country, achieving in sport. What are the women doing in this society I'm learning about? Oh, they're standing in their knickers showing their breasts for men. Now that one woman being empowered or feeling empowered because she's making money being in that picture is actually disempowering other women across the nation.
And what of the Sun's readers?
I think it's a good thing, personally, because I have a daughter, and I think women shouldn't be exposed like that in a national newspaper.
When I do buy it, that's the first page I go to, so I tell you, the Sun, for that page, it's a good newspaper.
There's some debate about whether this is actually a victory for the campaigners or simply a hard-headed decision by the Sun that page 3 has had its day. At a time when you can see very much more than bare breasts at the click of a button, page 3 doesn't have the pulling power it once did. But insiders say the Sun will watch carefully to see what happens, and if the impact is too great, page 3 could be back.
Today's page 3, a little more modest than usual, and tonight the Sun remain equally coy. They say talk about the death of page 3 is premature. As they say in the press, watch this space.
Jackie Long. Well, now the academic and feminist Germaine Greer joins us from Essex. The model on page 3, Chloe Goodman, she is in Birmingham, and Labour's Shadow Deputy Prime Minister Harriet Harman is here in the studio. Germaine Greer, you must be over the moon. You've seen the last of it.
No, I've never actually been one of the people who thought of it as a major evil. It's always struck me as innocent and old-fashioned, and compared to what I can see online any day, it was simple and meek. I asked my odd job man who reads the Sun, how do you feel about page 3? And he said, it cheers me up.
Well, let me put that to you, Chloe Goodman. Innocent and old-fashioned, or were you exploited?
I disagree that people feel that they were exploited. As like any young women of today's society, they are given lots of choices in career options, many of whom do choose to do page 3 because it's something they wish to do. And I don't agree with the fact that, yes, there are feminist groups, but why should feminist women then tell other women how to live their lives? That's something that, you know, women fought together to get the vote and so on and so forth. So why are women now fighting each other and telling each other what job roles to now take within the industry?
Well, it's quite a strong argument. What about you, Harriet Harman?
Well, I don't think that I'm taking issue with the choices that young women are making, but what I am taking issue with is the editorial judgment of a newspaper. And the context of this is us arguing back decades, you know, led in great part by Germaine, that actually there were many things that were important about a woman, and actually it wasn't the most important thing about her that she was young, that she had sexual attractiveness to a man, and that's what was important about her. We were saying that actually a woman can do all sorts of different roles, and therefore focusing on her with nothing but her knickers, with her breasts showing in order to be sexually attractive to men, that did not represent the news about women. And I think in 100 years' time, if you look back at the newspapers in this country and you open up a newspaper and see women depicted as standing in their knickers with their breasts showing, what would you think about women's role in society? So it's like a bigger context about the advance for women. And I think the idea that it's a bit of fun, well, I suppose it might be on the one hand, but on the other hand, you know, we want to see women in the newspapers doing all the things that women do in their lives, aside from the most important thing being they're young and sexually attractive to men.
Surely, Germaine Greer, this is what the old Germaine Greer used to say.
No, I never did say that. But the interesting thing to me right now is everyone's assuming that the only imagery of women in newspapers is page 3. Now, unfortunately, that's truer than it should be. If you look at the most pious newspaper, let's take The Guardian, and look to see how many images of women there are, you will actually see a rule emerging. Men are in the news and women are in the advertising. And this tells, and they're young and they're idealized in the advertising, that women with authority, senior women and so on, are virtually invisible. It's not just that we had page 3. Page 3 would have been fine if we had anything else, if we had clearer role models, and if we weren't getting used to hearing all our female leaders, who made themselves obnoxious from time to time, being ridiculed with impunity. The page 3 is not the issue. And the other thing is, of course, that page 3 hasn't gone anywhere but online. And there are so many more breasts on the Sun online than you would believe possible. And you can have a free trial today. The Sun is trying out a change. I think it's trying to move its readership to the online version. I think that's hopeless. I think it will fail. But you can't assume that the women who were agitating against page 3 have won if the Sun doesn't tell you that. The Sun hasn't capitulated. There is no evidence. We're interpreting post hoc here as propter hoc, which is an elementary logic mistake. And we have to wait and see what happens next. This is a developing story. It's not over.
Well, in truth, Chloe, you've gone online. I mean, you can go and pay the paywall and people can still see you if you pose again.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think nowadays, especially with the internet so greatly growing, I think page 3 going online, I think that's not really a bad idea at all. There are so much worse things on the internet nowadays that we need to be worried about other than page 3. And regarding back to the point of in 100 years' time, would we be proud that we turned the newspaper and saw page 3? What would we think of women? Well, what did we think of women and men 1,000 years ago when you see statues written all over the walls of men and women nude?
Ah, well, there's a good thought. 1,000 years ago, they were all in the nude.
Well, yes, well, it was something to be celebrated back then, wasn't it? There's still statues all around the world of men and female bodies in the nude. So I don't understand why it's just page 3 that's being targeted.
It's a rather good point. I mean, she is merely the present-day edition of Aphrodite in the nude in wherever it was.
Because this is about a newspaper, and I would agree with Germaine about this, is that actually the question is, what is valuable about women in society, and do you lose that value as you get older? And, you know, the argument has been that as men get older, like your good self, John, that their hair's grey, it shows wisdom, it shows experience.
I dye mine for grandpa.
They are even more admirable. But God help a woman who doesn't look like Chloe here, because therefore they don't have any value because they're no longer able to strip off and attract themselves
here, but I'm going
to
to have to. I think women have come on leaps and leaps and bounds from, you know, decades and decades ago. We are doing very well as a society as a whole. I think there's more job roles that are being offered to women. So you can't just single out page 3 as being the reason why women are now being undervalued and using it as the sort of excuse as to why women aren't getting roles that they are wanting.
Well, I don't think it's the reason, but I think it's an example of it. And of course it's not the whole story, and we're just discussing it more generally. But I think that, you know, we should be able to hope that women have got equal opportunities to men to be seen,
Sure,
you know,
and
in
I agree
all
with
sorts
that.
of different roles. And I think to the extent that you're saying that women's roles has advanced and women feel more able to make choices, that's all a good thing. And Jermaine's been part of the leadership of that movement that have said women don't just have to be there to be what men want them to be, they can actually choose it themselves. And that is a notion which 40 years ago
But
would
you
be
not
an
think
Chloe,
girls
let me
are
just- let me
choosing
just-
to
let
do
me
page
just-
3, it's
Chloe,
their
just-
choice.
Just let me bring Jermaine in, because
Sure.
I'm just trying to think about Rupert Murdoch, who's very active on Twitter. Suddenly receives a tweet saying that his old nemesis, as I'm sure he must see you, is suddenly on side and defending his right to bung a woman in the topless condition on page 3.
Sorry, you're going to have to repeat that.
I'm flattered that you think that Rupert is responding to something I've done. My family and his family have been entwined ever since I was a child, and I do find this quite amusing. He had said he thought that page 3 was old-fashioned, but the assumption that he edits the newspapers he owns and that he looks over the shoulder of his editors is simply wrong. He doesn't do that. He's a proprietor, he's not an editor. And whatever is going on at The Sun, as far as I can see, it's an editorial decision. They are moving towards a change which I think might turn out to be wrong. Because the thing about The Sun is if you've always grabbed your copy of The Sun and your cup of tea and sat down and had your 11s and looked at page 3 and then gone straight to the sport, it's not as if anything on page 3 was a surprise, you're really going to want to have it still on paper. The interesting thing is that online the images are much more arresting because the definition is so much higher and the colour is so much more intense.
Jermaine?
It's really a completely different thing. It's an orgy online.
Jermaine, we must leave it there. Jermaine Greer, Chloe Goodman, Harriet Harman, thank you all three very warmly for coming in. Kathy.
Thanks, John. After the break, what's the greatest evil facing this country? According to the Archbishop of York,